Time on Legislature Today with Dale Wetzel for an update on western North Dakota and what's happening in oil counties. Hi.
Rock Alley, American Bar and Grill in downtown Bismarck, and this is the North Dakota Association of Oil and Gas Producing Counties hour of the Legislature Today, and we have with us on the telephone, we have Mr. Steve Holen, who is the North Dakota Association of Oil and Gas Producing Counties President-elect. He is the McKenzie County School District Superintendent. We also have Mr. Ron Anderson, who's a McKenzie County Commissioner, a former state legislator, a former House Speaker, and we're going to be speaking to them about how this legislation that the House and Senate are considering is going to affect how they do their business. Mr. Holen, can you tell us a bit about the general impact of oil development and how it's affected your school district and how you manage to handle having extra students, extra demands on your system?
Sure, Dale. Thanks for having me on the show. Well, it's been kind of an evolution, obviously. We started with, impacts on our transportation with our buses and on our road system, and very quickly afterward, it did start impacting our student enrollments as these families started to move to our area and kids were showing up at our doors. We initially started by trying to fill back up the space that we had open from years of declining enrollment, and certainly we did have some space available. We tried to do the best we could to allocate that as best we could and provide as much room for kids as possible without going to temporary units. And we had done that, and we'd reached that point where we had filled ourselves back up, and now it was time to think of other solutions. And we were a school district that had to go about a building project to gain some capacity at our elementary school to accommodate the growth. So it was that issue. It is the housing issue. We're one of those, as you mentioned before with Dan, that we had to get into the housing game as well. We purchased housing units for our teachers for affordable housing, and quite frankly, to fill all the positions we needed. And so those things have continued. We've added programs, specifically ELL and so forth, to meet the demands of the new students and the different demographic that we're getting from these students that are moving into our district. So it's certainly been an amazing journey, and I think the issue is it's probably only getting started. The housing hasn't been here. As this housing comes, I think the biggest growth is probably yet to come.
You mentioned ELL, sir. Can you explain what that is and how it's unusual to have that program in your school district?
Well, English language learners are students that English is not their primary language. And, we just happen to be a district that for quite a few years did not have students in that category. And obviously with the new demographic of students that came in, we were kind of thrust in the position of having a number of them. So we went from, 0 students to about a dozen within about a year and a half that qualified for services. So it's one of those examples of having to act quickly and add programs quickly to adjust to the students coming in. And we've done so, and we're glad to do that. But it's just one of the challenges that you face.
How many... You mentioned getting into the housing game as a need for, to attract teachers. How difficult is it to attract teachers anyway, and what kind of wages do you have to pay?
Well, that's a great question. We do end up having to pay larger wages. It can be a challenge. We'd like to think we have very good facilities. We have a great community that is very welcoming for people to move in. But honestly, for a lot of our hires are new out of college or otherwise are young people. It can be a challenge just with some of the perceptions, I guess, of what's going on out here. Sometimes doesn't always make it attractive for a person to come out and meet this challenge. So you do have to pay more. I know that we've had to increase our wages for teachers, for ancillary staff, all the way down the line to compete. And certainly the cost of living out here is a challenge. Everything is more expensive right now. And so it's just part of all the things you try to do to keep that person coming, and we've had a lot of them. We've hired well over a dozen. We're up to 17 this year professional contracts we're offering, attracting people to our community.
Sir, one of the things that is really intriguing about your situation is that you rely a lot on bus transport for your students, and of course the road network in McKenzie County is under a lot of stress. To what extent are you able to keep your bus fleet rolling, and to what extent is the state aid that's available adequate for doing that?
Well, it definitely is a challenge. Excuse me. And obviously we're the largest geographical land area, so our bus service extends quite a few miles. And We've seen our buses' lifespans reduced dramatically. We're seeing buses that now, if we get 3-4 years out of them in certain areas, we need to look at a different bus. And that's obviously dramatically different than we found in the past. So it's a bus driver recruitment issue in the road system. It's just a general issue we're having with people moving out into areas of our district that haven't been occupied for a number of years. And we're finding ourselves extending routes and trying to create new routes to meet those needs, but at the same time having a very difficult time attracting drivers with CDLs in this market we have out here. So we're finding ourselves having to reduce service at a time when we really need to increase it as much as possible. And certainly the families we're having come to our district are in dire need of this transportation and can't get their students to school otherwise. So transportation is a real issue. Our county's been very good working with us through what they call the infrastructure fund for our transportation needs. So we try to stay on top of it, but the bus driver issue is probably the biggest challenge we have right now.
To what extent is private industry literally recruiting your drivers as they sit in their buses? I mean, I've heard stories in Dickinson of sanitation truck drivers being recruited as they're on their routes.
Yeah, I think it happens. I mean, I don't think there's any question about it. And I guess, we're in a difficult position because we do understand we're trying to offer a part-time job and a bus driver and compete with an oil-field wage CDL. And we just can't compete. And we know we do lose some of our drivers for that. And it makes us seek a different type of employee, a different demographic person to try to seek out to be a bus driver, who's willing to, I guess, forgo the salary that we can't offer in the hours, but just to want to be a part of the school, help the school, and be around kids, and that's kind of all we can do.
We're talking to Steve Holen. He's the president-elect of the North Dakota Association of Oil and Gas Producing Counties and the superintendent of the McKenzie County School District. Mr. Holen, I also wanted your analysis of, as you know, in the legislature there's a rather significant overhaul of education finance going on in terms of how the state pays aid to local schools. And I wanted to know how you thought that would affect your district and your area generally.
Well, yeah, it's an interesting time for school funding, there's no question. And, I think it all is going to depend on the district and the different factors it has. I think the changes that are being made now are obviously going to favor possibly districts that are growing, which could be a good thing for us. It's just anytime you get into a education funding bill, the devil's in the details. And I think the overall concept of adequacy is sound, is understandable, but the mechanism in which the funding is provided and to try to account for all the different characteristics and factors of all school districts is really challenging. Everybody's got their own unique demographics that affect their funding. Certainly out in Western, we're facing a very unique challenge. So I think it's extremely difficult for a funding formula to meet all those different dynamics, and I think that's where inevitably you have some winners and losers in that formula. And we're just hoping we could find other mechanisms outside that formula as well to address our unique needs, and that's where we've been focusing this session on how to get into the production tax formula again and possibly the impact fund to kind of level that balance and playing field from where the foundation formula falls off and we have to pick up the rest.
To what extent does the bill that's being considered not meet your needs, sir, and why is that?
Well, I think there's going to be a lot of it is based on the guidelines and the fallbacks of where you start the funding formula from. One of the challenges we have tremendously is in the mill levy and the valuation. What we're happening in Western North Dakota is our valuations are increasing very rapidly. And up to this point, we've been faced with a 12% cap on what we can do. So a lot of us have been losing mills at a fairly rapid rate. My district in particular, we're down to 53 mills when the cap was 110. And at no effort of our own, it was just the way the funding, the mechanism worked out. So we're very conscious. We hope that the final bill will account for some of those factors, that we won't lose state funding based on the fact that we can't get a levy up to a number, whether it be 50 or 70, not to our own fault, but the law won't let us get there. So we hope that those kind of factors are accounted for, and we hope that opportunities for the school construction loans and so forth are there, and there's mechanisms to fund those back again. So there's a lot of good things in 1319 that were put in on the Senate side, and we're waiting to see now in conference if they become part of the final bill.
Sir, just tell us a bit about the school district. How many students do you have, and how many students did you have 5 years ago, and how much has your budget grown in that period of time? You know, just a representative period of time to give our folks an idea of how much you've grown.
Yeah, absolutely. We're at about 870 students K through 12 right now. About 5 years ago, we were at about 515 students. So that's been our growth. A lot of that growth started about the spring of 2010. So a lion's share of that growth happened in the last 2.5 years. Our budget has doubled, probably went for 5 years ago. Easily, we're probably about a $5-6 million budget. We're up to about a $10 million budget right now. And, you know, the interesting part has been just this year alone, we have enrolled about 370 new students in the district. And, you know, that's an amazing number for a district that has 870 students. You know, we're still finding a lot of in and out. Of course, not all those students stay. Students that came the year before haven't stayed. But just the general administrative effort to enroll all those new students in the in and out, and the challenges our teachers and staff face, and dealing with some of those challenges of students that may be here for 3 weeks and gone again, and then they may be back again in about 2 months, are really unique and have been tremendous obstacles for us. But at the same time, the new students that we have, it's exciting. You know, 5 years ago, we may have been wondering, you know, can we continue to support 2 buildings? And now we face issues of, you know, when do we need our 3rd building? So there's a lot of good that comes with this as well, but it's just going to be able to maintain and to be able to plan and where is this all going and try to stay ahead of this. Our patrons don't like portables. They don't like big classrooms with 30 students. So we're trying to stay ahead of that as best as we can as this continues to go.
Ms. Hedger, to what extent is education important in particular to a business person such as yourself who is looking to hire folks for, you know, jobs with technical sophistication?
Well, I think it's key for any business. It's key for our communities. And I think it's also an indicator. You know, I think every business is kind of looking at, we've got a workforce shortage in North Dakota. We've got, you know, we're sort of the land of opportunity. And there are many jobs that need to be done. And as our schools grow, it's indicative of other supplementary incomes that are coming in. Just as Dan Brose mentioned earlier in the show, you know, you have spouses and partners who are coming with their relationships to work in the oil field, and so they also can then supplement, you know, some of our workforce in other industries such as manufacturing. So school is critical to train the future of our workforce. It's critical to have a good quality of life in our communities, and also it's indicative of the opportunity that we have here.
Ron, we have on the phone with us also McKenzie County Commissioner Ron Anderson. Mr. Anderson, welcome.
Thank you, Dale. I see we're both still around.
Yes, we are. When I met Mr. Anderson, he was in the North Dakota House of Representatives. He was the Speaker of the House, and I almost called him Mr. Speaker there a moment ago. In fact, I think I'll just call you that for the rest of the interview, if it's all right with me. If it's all right with you.
Ron would work fine.
Okay. Mr. Anderson, tell us about the importance of this bill, and I'm talking about House Bill 1358, which distributes a great deal of money to western North Dakota, the importance of that to McKenzie County and keeping up its infrastructure.
Well, Dale, it's very important. Of course, I listened to your conversation with Dan before, and certainly there are things in this bill, and we don't know that this. I'm going by the amendments that were offered to the conference committee last Saturday, and I don't know if those will be the final ones or not. But we'll have to rein in our horns a little bit on our budget. I think we're very thankful for the money that they're giving us. But I use as an example, our budget in McKenzie County in 2009 was $16 million. Our budget in 2013 is $106 million. And, of course, we're using a lot of reserves in that, and we won't quite fulfill that with 1358, so we'll have to rein it in. and that's very important. We need more in general government. All that money can't go to roads. I wish it could. But we also, another thing that's not been mentioned out here, Dan hit a little bit on it on safety. We really need that DOT money out here, too, on our state highways like 85, 4-laning, Highway 23, Highway 22, 1806, our truck bypasses. We've got to get this done, and as soon as we can. You know, we've had, I think up until the end of March, there were something like 29 fatalities in North Dakota, and 11 of them were in McKenzie County. So the safety issue that comes with the roads, with the money for the roads, is so important. This bill is going to help us a great deal. I guess, like all legislation, it's never quite enough.
Is the rate of fatalities in McKenzie County, is it a road problem, a road quality problem, or is it a traffic problem? Is it a law enforcement problem? How would you describe it?
You could all of the above. We've tripled our sheriff's office in the last 3 years. And what happens is they're really not out there enforcing the laws. They're reacting to accidents. There isn't enough highway patrolmen, so when a highway patrolman comes on to inspect an accident, we got to have 2 deputies there, at least directing traffic, and it's just a killer for us. So, like I say, we've tripled that law enforcement, and we've got to add more.
One of the things that the legislature debated and ultimately did not act upon was an increase in speeding fines. Do you think that something like that at the state level would be helpful in trying to rein in some of maybe the more egregious driving that's going on out there?
Yes, I do, and because I think North Dakota has been ridiculously low with our fines. A $5, $10 fine for a stop sign, some trucking companies just say to heck with it. They'd rather pay that and not have to slow down. So, yeah, I think that's a big part of the issue.
Where do you see this going in McKenzie County, this trend? Is it starting to peak? Is it still rising? Is it plateauing? How would you describe it?
Oh, no, it's still rising. We probably will see this kind of activity if the prognosticators are right until at least 2025, when some of the drilling might go off, back off a little bit, and then we'll still have this people in production. In Watford City right now, we're planning by 2020 to have 10,000 people, and in 2009 we had 1,500. It takes a lot of money to put in the infrastructure there.
How has it changed McKenzie County? I mean, the population increase you just mentioned is quite startling, and what does that mean for a person such as yourself or people like you who have been living there a long time, and then all of a sudden you got all these folks running around?
Well, our lifestyle is gone. I get 1 or 2 calls a week, people just frustrated, saying we can't live like this. I mean, obviously we're going to have to live like this, so we're going to have to try to get this infrastructure back in place where it's not quite so difficult for them. Yeah, we're losing a lot of, I would say, our core people, a lot of the older people. I guess I'm in that category. I'm not going anywhere, but a lot of them are. They're just moving out. You can't trail a herd of cows down the road like we used to. It's just about impossible to move large farm machinery down the road without risking your life. And so an improvement in this infrastructure will help that attitude some, but it'll never be the same.
How long do you think it will take to get the road network in your region in the kind of shape you want it to be in?
Well, we had just in the county now. I can't speak for the state.
I'm just talking about McKenzie County.
Yeah, we kind of planned on a 5-year, $300 million plan we've got 130 miles of pavement and 1,100 miles of gravel, and they're just about all impacted. We wanted to get those up into shape. That 5-year plan would take $300 million. We're going to be quite a bit short on that, but I guess we'll just do what we can. One of the things people don't understand, I guess, about gravel roads with this kind of traffic is they're never fixed. I mean, you spend $100,000 this summer I have to spend $100,000 next summer on the same road.
Is there any thought to maybe paving more road? Is that an option?
We'd love to, but there's not going to be that kind of money there. Paving, you know, it's 1.5 million minimum a mile to pave it. So if you're, you know, if we're realizing $45 million a year from our gross production tax, that doesn't go very far.
You were in the legislature, Ron. How do you think that the legislature is responding to your needs? Do you think that it's been adequate?
I think they're really trying. What has happened is everybody else has a handout too. So, you know how legislatures are; they try to appease most of the people. My service in the legislature was during the time, as you probably remember, we didn't have a dime, so it wasn't too hard to do it then.
Yeah.
So no, they're giving it a good attempt. I think one of the things that I see is when they do come out on tours, you know, you just can't figure this country out in a half day or a 1 day tour. You got to live here a couple of weeks to just see the magnitude of it.
To what extent does the county rely upon federal money to help you, and do you see that as, first of all, as a source of funds, and secondly, is it a practical source of funds given the federal government's financial problems?
No, we don't plan on much from the federal government. We get a few dollars in Bankhead Jones back from our vast federal lands we have here, but it isn't a big player in this at all. Maybe it will be if they can weasel some money out of the feds, like for funding four-laning of 85 and things like that. But as far as the county goes, no.
I was just wondering about whether earmarks in the past were useful, and as you know, earmarks are kind of out of fashion now.
Yeah, they are. You know, we have a highway we've been fighting here. It's a state highway, 1806. That was an earmark way back when, I think when Senator Burdick was there. It was one of our major haul roads now, and of course it was built for cars and boats. It wasn't built for 105,500-pound loads. So that thing went to heck, and we're I don't see earmarks as really helping us a bit out here. They just don't have the money.
So just tell us, how would you describe the state of McKenzie County right now?
We're 1 day away from complete chaos every day. It's
only one?
Yeah. Tomorrow it could happen. I mean, you get a little rain, and they move a few rigs, and just above my house up here, I'm right on a drilling line, and I see they were all down today. 4 days ago, there were 5 rigs drilling up there. So when they decide to move out, if there's a little bad conditions on the road, it's gone very quickly.
We've been speaking to Mr. Ron Anderson. He's a McKenzie County Commissioner, a former state legislator, a former Speaker of the North Dakota House of Representatives. Thank you for your time, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you much, Dale.
And we've also had with us Mr. Brady Pelton, the Deputy Director of the North Dakota Association of Oil and Gas Producing Counties, and Ms. Kristen Hedger, who is a Vice President for Business Development for Killdeer Mountain Manufacturing, which is a manufacturer of aerospace equipment that has locations in western North Dakota. This is Dale Wetzel, and this has been the Legislature Today radio show. We're on our final week. Thank you for listening.
When it's time to invest in siding or windows, Wrestler Siding and Windows knows